2, 1, recording. Right, that's recording that. You've done my own theme tune there.
Ah, great stuff.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to welcome Mr. Paul Drury to the collective. Thank you, sir, for your time.
You're welcome. Good to see you, Marvin.
Yeah, I think we met in Felixstowe with the Household Troops, didn't we? So
2016, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah, Easter weekend. I remember it well.
Oh golly, is that much of a pain?
No, it was a good weekend. It was a long drive. I drove there that weekend.
Oh wow!
After the Sunday morning meeting finished, I got in my car and drove back home. So it was a long weekend, great weekend.
Oh golly, dedication to duty.
Absolutely.
So you survived it, and you're still back with us. That's a good thing.
Indeed.
So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, obviously your name is very familiar in the journals, and it's very interesting when I was looking at your music earlier, how many of them I've actually played. It's quite prolific for me. So it's very nice to meet the man behind the name and to talk music inspiration. So obviously the convention that what you write does not necessarily get published in the order that you write it. We know that. But can you remember, where did it start? Where did this compositional act start for you?
Oh my word! About 40 years ago, I think I was 13, and somebody gave me some Salvation score paper, and I was getting into kind of music at school and harmony and counterpoint and stuff, and I thought this can't be so hard. So I wrote. It would be 1981. I wrote a march, and I thought it was quite good. The reality is it was awful. It was absolutely diabolical. I've still got it somewhere, but it's never been played. But then what happened was, well, what do you do with it? Because I didn't know. I was 12 or 13. Didn't know what to do with it. So I asked what everybody does when they don't know the answer to a question. I asked my mum. Said, what should I do with this? And she said, well, there's only one thing to do. We'll go and see the divisional commander. So we went and
Who was the divisional commander?
Oh, Major Robert Hunter. He's gone to glory now, but he was the divisional commander in the North Scotland Division.
Yeah. So is that where you come from? I mean, just the accent, maybe where you picked it up, but are you a Scottish person by breeding?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. Born and bred in Scotland. Grew up in Dundee.
Okay.
And so we went to see the DC, and the DC was very kind to see us and talked us through, I think, and he actually sent it on to Colonel Ray Bowes, who at the time was the head of music editorial, who gave me a very fair critique and sent it back saying, keep going.
Yeah.
And over the years I did that. I just kept going, and I found that in my early 20s it was an opportunity for people were asking you to write stuff. Singing company leaders, YP band leaders were always looking for new music.
Yeah.
So people would ask you, and that was always a great spur for me to keep going. So that's where it all started for me. Although I have to say, in my younger years, it was really all about playing. It wasn't so much about wasn't so much about writing. It was much more about experiencing things as a player, and that was where the major focus of my attention was.
What was the kind of core band you had in your YP days when you were doing this? I mean, army bands differ. I mean, we know that there were some fantastic Salvation Army bands in Scotland and all over the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, when you were sort of getting better and following this advice, obviously you had, what was the first band to play a piece in a sort of a proper sense that you were brave enough to want to put on the bandstands and say, let's have a crack?
Yeah, I took some music to music school, divisional of back in those days. Scotland was its own territory,
yes,
and we had a territorial music school, and I took some music to music school. I mean, our core band back then, it's quite funny how things have changed. We would have considered ourselves to be quite a small band,
mm-hmm.
and yet there was 20, 22, 23
I knew you were
players.
going to say that.
And big bands in those days were, big bands. We were very much a kind of jobbing core band, and was very happy to be in the band, and loved my banding. And from time to time, the band would try some stuff out, but it wasn't until I went to university in Edinburgh and linked up with the corps at Gorgie that would be where more of my music got played, because I wrote quite a lot for Sing Company and YP Band, and occasionally for the senior band. So that would be where I started hearing more of my music being played.
Yeah. What was it? Was it an interesting effect? Because obviously a lot of people have spoken about the fact that when you've got music notation software, it's always perfect pitch and all the instruments are perfectly aligned. Whereas when you hear it in a real context, you start to pick up the fact, hang on, that cornet line doesn't work properly. And you think, I've got to go back and revisit it because it may not, it's perfect when you see it on the screen, but when it's in real life, it changes slightly. How was the experience of that?
Yeah, that was really interesting for me, and I very early on I realised that if what I was going to write was going to be true and good enough, I had to kind of hear it in my head, and so I'm quite critical as I'm writing, making sure that I know what it I have an idea what it's going to sound like in my head. Writing for brass bands is very interesting for me because you don't have the breadth of range that, say, you would do if you were writing for an orchestra or even a wind band or piano for that matter. And you've got to handle all the different textures, and that for me has been the key to how I write. Always thinking about the texture, and I tend to write. I do obviously use score notation programs now, and it's great because I used to hate when I was handwriting pieces.
I was going to ask that. When did it start? Does it start with the handwriting and then you put it when it's fleshed out?
Absolutely. I didn't own a computer till I was nearly 30.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I, the majority of my early writing was all done with paper and pen, and of course the challenge was when you finished a piece, then you had to go, I need to write the parts out now, and it was, the benefit for me of score writing programs is that you don't have to worry about that now. Like, kind of parts are taken care of it. But I always write with the sound turned off. So, I'm always making sure I'm trying to test myself just to make sure that what I want to hear is what I'm writing. I'll put the sound on to check for errors, but I won't use that as a kind of touchboard or sounding board for how the music sounds. I like to do that.
Yeah.
You know, just me in my head and the voices in it.
I mean, I remember that. I mean, I think from my from my sort of viewpoint, in a small band, the Unity series is very much a prolific thing because it's so playable and so accessible. And your Unity series stuff is really some of the best out there for playable, accessible pieces. It's not trying to be complex. I mean, you've written across the board, obviously, and you know, plenty of different things. I think you'll probably be known as, you know, they say James Anderson was known for God Quest. You'll forever be the Jubilee man.
Yeah.
Whether that's a millstone around your neck, I don't know. Whether you enjoy that, but I mean, I am so glad. It's a lovely waltz. I remember playing Happy People. You got you know, some lovely Christmassy pieces. I mean, Advent miniatures. I mean, most people would go for a full-blown Christmas carol, but an Advent miniature you don't come across. I've always found Advent songs to be very difficult to play, to find to play as background music or collection music. So it's interesting to have that.
I'll tell you a funny story about 3 Advent miniatures, how that came about.
Oh, please do.
Every New Year or just Christmas time at Gorgie, we used to have a core pantomime. Some people would say that it was a pantomime more than at Christmas, but we used to have a core pantomime every year, and we would have a little band accompanying the singing, just 4 or 5 of us on a piano, and I would put together the arrangements for this pantomime, and one year somebody said, write a small overture, just write a small overture, and I wrote a little kind of potpourri of Christmas carols, little snippets of tunes. It was about 30 bars long or something, and that became the first movement of 3 Advent miniatures. And so I don't know if I'm unique in Salvation Army circles for my music coming from a pantomime. I've been involved in quite a few pantomimes in my year, and the second movement of Advent miniatures is 13 bars long, and I wanted to see if I could take the concept of a miniature to the extreme, and so I wanted it actually to be 10 bars, but I couldn't get it to 10 bars, and it's 13 bars. But I've always been grateful. I mean, my first playing, I've done a lot of playing, but my first serious playing was in my YP band, and I've always been keen that there is music there for people who are at the start of their playing career, and the waltz, I Am So Glad, was written especially for that purpose. The YP band leader at the time at Gorgie had a lot
too many waltzes, do you? So it's a very interesting entry. Because I mean, you'd imagine that's something that, I don't know, RSA would do with the International Staff Band for a little Unity series ensemble. That's a really attractive piece.
Well, it was really just something that's got a lot of repetition in it, and that was deliberate, so that kids, as they're beginning to learn, you know, like there's a few repeated phrases in that, so they would get used to playing them. It's set very low down, so it doesn't explore the upper parts of the range. It's you know, it's very, very much for a set of beginners, and it works quite well for that, and it was just something I thought I would try, and I've always enjoyed writing for Unity series, and
I did see that. I mean, it's you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 at the moment. I mean, right? From 1999 to the present day. So I mean, Zambia Salute, I think, is 2014 is the last one you've got credit on. obviously
maybe there's one after that. I think Go Forth.
possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's been, and
Yeah, of course,
similarly,
2013 next. So
right, yeah, and it's something I like to do. I actually
yeah.
think it's quite a good compositional challenge as well. And
Really?
well, you've got 4 parts, well, 5 parts now, and you can't go beyond that. So everything's got to be contained within those 5 parts. So you can, you have to, you've got a first cornet, you've got a second cornet, a first
Yeah.
horn, you've got a second horn baritone, a bass line, a euphonium line, and that's pretty much it. So you have to make sure that you can manage the discipline of getting all your musical thoughts into those 5 parts. So I find it quite a good discipline.
That's interesting because it's a discipline rather than maybe a limitation. I mean, you've got Jubilee, Such Love I was listening to the other day, Breathe on Me I had earlier on today, which are general series, and I think I've got a very extensive suite called The Victors.
That's right. Yeah.
Which you've written a few years, which is a very epic piece with lots of colour. So it's a case of liberating and kind of a discipline for you to say, I want to write Unity series because it's got that structure and it helps you to focus your energies and thoughts.
Yeah, quite often. I find that's the case, and I'll never actually. I haven't written any Unity series for a good 2 or 3 years, but I'm not going to stop, and I would never stop because I like. I think it's important, and of course, many of our core bands now are playing Unity series.
Yeah.
Because that's all their numbers allow. I mean, I now soldier at the core at Boness, and we have. I'm the bandmaster there. We have a small band. There's 8 of us, and when we're playing out anywhere, we'll get a couple of helpers along. So there's only 10 of us. So Unity series is perfect for my core band, and it's good to see. I mean, in the last year or two, we've seen the likes of Dan Elsom, Sam Creamer, all writing for Unity series. Bill Himes, I think, Bill Gordon, Ken Downey in the last 2 or 3 years, and it's good to see that. It's really great as a small bandmaster. It's great that we have this music at our disposal.
Yeah, so it's very much a discipline effort, so rather than saying, I'm going to write a piece of music that can be played at a big town hall event with a massed band or with several core bands together, rather than locking yourself into the intentional thing of the local core band. You find that much more structured and sensible to write then?
Well, it's something I enjoy doing, and
learn about that.
I have to say, I'll mainly write if somebody's wanting me to write something for them. The only occasion where that might be different is if my wife tells me that that's a nice tune, you should do an arrangement of that, and she says that quite a lot. And I keep saying to her, well, that's a nice tune, maybe you should do an arrangement of it. But she never takes me up on that. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy writing for all sizes. And that of course, when you're writing for the wider brass band world, that's not the case. You have a fixed instrumentation pretty much. Whereas if you're writing for army journals, you can write for a general series band, you can write for a triumph series band, you can write for a Unity series band, and that's great. That's great for variety.
Interesting. So I think if I don't ask you this question, I'm going to regret it. And I think there's a lot of people who may want to know if there is a story behind it. But the incredible Jubilee, very famous march, very well known and very well received. And, every time I've heard it played, it's such a joy. And you can tell it's got that colour and vibrancy. So can you just tell the story behind Jubilee, please?
Yeah. it's quite an interesting story. I wrote it for Gorgie Salvation Army Band Centenary in I think it was 1996 or 1995, round about then. Maybe a wee bit later. So what is that? That's 20 plus years ago. Yeah. And the band played it a couple of times. They recorded a CD for their centenary. They're a pretty decent band at that time, and they played it on the CD. It was a title track of the CD, and I was happy with that. I sent it off for consideration for publication, and it came back pretty quickly. The head of music editorial at the time, whose name I won't mention, but he's the bandmaster at Kettering.
That bandmaster
said, well, it really wasn't to his taste, and that's fine. He said, I'm not really into these kind of circus marches, and it might be better as a well, it is a circus march, I guess.
Really?
He said it might be better as a xylophone solo. So I just left it.
That would be interesting.
And I gave it to a couple of friends and stuff, but never thought any more of it. And then I was invited to do a tour with the Household Troops Band back in 2001. And when John Mott asked me to go and play with the band that year, he said, we're rehearsing on this date, come down. And he said, I tell you what, I hear you write music, so bring some music. So I took some music, and the first piece that we ran down was Jubilee.
Yeah.
And the guys in the band kind of thought it was a funny little piece, because it doesn't take itself too seriously. And they thought this is going to work, and we featured it a lot on that tour, and indeed recorded it the next year. And in the Troops Band at that time was Paul Sharman. And Paul said to me that at some point on the Scottish tour, you know, that's a great little match. You should submit that. And I said, well, I have. And he said, well, I tell you what, submit it again. So I submitted it again. I got an email. Well, it wouldn't have been an email, probably a letter about 6 or 7 months later from Andrew Blythe saying, you kindly sent us a march, Jubilee, that I think the Household Troops are featuring a number of months ago, but we've lost it. We can't find it anywhere. Could you send it again? So that march, that piece is the only ever piece that I submitted 3 times to the music department before it got an opportunity to be published. I'm not a proud person at all. I find it quite amusing that people like playing it. I find it quite amusing that there's apparently a world record performance in terms of speed. There's apparently bands that can play it in 1 minute 50 seconds or something. And I've heard everybody play it. It's very popular in army circles. It seems to be quite popular in contesting circles as well. It's been at the Bugle contest down in Cornwall, which is a famous march and test piece contest. Last July, it was a set march for that, and it's quite interesting that it's been so well received. And it also, and this is just absolutely freaky for me. I got a phone call out the blue about 7 or 8 months ago from a woman, and she said, I'm from the BBC. And I said, all right, okay. She said, we're filming a documentary about Prince Charles and the Duchy
I remember
of Cornwall.
it.
And she said, there's a band, there's a garden party for his 70th birthday at one of his one of his houses in Cornwall, and there's a band playing this music, and we just assumed it was hundreds of years old. But somebody told us it's not, and but I don't know how they managed, but by some detective way they managed to get hold of me and said, so we're looking for your permission to play this music. And I said, well, fine by me, but actually I don't own the rights to this music. I said, you'll need to speak to the Salvation Army. So they put them in touch with the music department. I remember sitting watching the television one night thinking, this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, there's Prince Charles and there's my music. It was just just hilarious.
That really is lovely.
It's nice, and if it, you know, if the pieces brought people some fun and enjoyment, and you know, I'm no fan of tambourines, but apparently it's quite a famous timbrel march as well.
Yeah, I can see.
So if people are happy to hear it played and stuff, I'm not going to get too posh about it. I'm thrilled that people play it, and happy for that.
I mean, I'm looking at your list. I mean, you've obviously got some other very well loved pieces on there. I mean, there's a very nice general series, Mark. I can't actually get a recording of it, for Govan Citadel Band.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the people at Govan would know very much about it, but was it for an anniversary or celebration?
It was the bandmaster at the time had asked me for a march. He said, I want a march that's a bit like the contest in March the Champions. So I looked at ways to do it, and it's similar to the Champions. It follows the same key structures, so it starts in the same key, it ends in the same key, it goes in the same places in the middle, and that was written for Govan Band. Now again, that would probably be a good 15 years ago or something.
2004 it was published.
Right, okay, so maybe even a wee bit, a little bit before that, and I was fortunate enough to attend one of these Salvation Army music composer type events, training day, and we were all given you know, an hour or so with a member of the editorial team, and I was fortunate enough to have an hour with Kenneth Downey. And
I think everybody spends time with Ken Downey, so it must be a magical thing.
Yeah, no, it is, and he's such a graceful and generous man with his time, and he said the opening section, letter A, there's two quavers into letter A, and it's G, C, and then the first note of letter A is B, GCB, Govan Citadel Band. And Ken was looking at this march. He said, yeah, it's good, it's got good structure and stuff like that. He said, but it's too high. I said, what do you mean? He said, I think it's too high. It needs to come down a tone. And I said, well, that's all well and good, but then I need to find a band whose initials are FBA rather than GCB. So if it's all the same, I'll keep it as it is. And he said, well, fair enough. And I submitted it, and lo and behold, it was published. And it's not often I would fight. I would argue against advice from Ken Downey, but just in that moment, I decided to
stand up for the reasons as to why the march was written. But
yeah,
when I was preparing for this interview, I think it was Breathe on Me, but the hymn tune arrangement I downloaded on YouTube, and listening to that, I would not have associated that with the happy, swingy Paul Drury marches of Happy People. I'm so definitely not Jubilee. It's a total contrast. So do you enjoy the contrast in the music? I mean, you've done a lot of Unity that's very joyful and jolly and to marches, and I mean, I know you've got Such Love and Sweet Spirit of Christ.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a breadth over there. Is that something you enjoy doing, or is it just a one-off challenge that hit you?
Well, yeah. And again, it's down to the melody as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I was when Breathe on Me came out. It's a songster piece written by Mark Porter from Doncaster, and when that piece was published in Sing to the Lord, I was the songster leader at Gorgie at that time, and we got that music out one night to have a sing through it, and we decided as a brigade that we all loved it, loved the tune, loved the melody, and of course this is a great thing that the army allows you to do. Take well-known words and set new music to them. I think it's a great thing that we do in the army. So the brigade liked the song, and one night after songster practice, we always used to have a blether, and my deputy songster leader at the time said to me, that would work as a band arrangement. And I said, do you think so? He said, yeah, I think it would. So I did it actually quite quickly. For me, I'm not the quickest of writers, but I did that quite quickly, and actually used it at a couple of 2 or 3 different band competitions, where you have to play a hymn tune, and I used it quite a lot there. I think I think it does tie into my kind of reflective, thoughtful self. I am quite a reflective person. Some people would say, deep and a touch moody at times. I do tend to at times retreat within myself, and I think one of the outlets for that is writing this kind of reflective style of music. And I think you've mentioned 3 there in the general series that have been published. There was also a little one, The Greatest Adventure, in the Triumph series, which is the Keith Banks chorus, and I do enjoy exploring the sound of the band and feeling how the textures come together, and I do tend to follow a bit of a formula with my more devotional music. I'm not trying to do anything too spectacular. It's normally you'll hear the melody twice. There'll be a little development section, then you'll hear the melody at the end. And I think if you follow all my devotional pieces, you'll find that they pretty much follow that formula. And I get a lot of satisfaction from putting these pieces together.
So it's a very organic thing for you to do then, and it displays both sort of opposites of the spectrum, that you're quite happy to write a waltz or a march for whatever and whomever, and yet that deep spirituality of the setting of the meditation, the quietness, is also very much an integral part.
Yeah, I think so, and I also think it's a bit of who I am, both in terms of how I am as a person, but how I am with my faith as well, because I like anybody else, I have my struggles with my faith, and how that manifests itself in the person that I am. And I think it allows me to delve a little bit into my own spirituality, and allow myself to reflect a little bit more. I find as I get older, that's an easier place for me to go.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple of sort of questions that dovetail together. First one is about mentors and people who inspired you when you were growing up and you started your compositional journey. And we'll go on that one first. When you were beginning to write and found that this talent was there and the Army music began to get published, who were the people that encouraged you and helped you in your writing and gave you that critique on the scores and so forth?
Oh, that's quite a hard one. I kept a lot of things to myself in the earlier days. I'm not blessed with the greatest amount of confidence. So when, and I've kept this close to my heart. I don't take even constructive criticism very well, and I certainly didn't as a young person. So I thought, right, well, I'll just keep writing for myself, but there were a number of people who encouraged me to write and allowed me to have a vehicle for writing. My divisional youth chorus leader in the East of Scotland division, Christine Redhead, who was a famous soprano soloist and a great singer and also a great vocal trainer. She encouraged me to write for the youth chorus, and I did. I didn't actually have any kind of formal training as such. Nobody, I didn't really seek out anybody. I actually didn't think any of my stuff was good enough for anybody to worry about.
Interesting.
So,
given the quality of your writing, I would, it would not sort of say you had maybe, let me think, Ray Bowes, or I mean, you mentioned Ken Downey and Stevenard and people like, I don't know, Dingoff, Norton, well, not Dingoff because he went back, but Norman Bickoff, people who would have come through the corps, come through the division, and would have maybe heard your music and said, that's interesting. Who's writing that? And
I guess it wasn't actually getting played that much. So it would probably be played in the core setting, YP band, singing company, that sort of thing. And then there came a point where I mid-20s, maybe late 20s, when I thought, right, I'm just gonna grab the bull by the horns here, and I'm gonna send down some music. And I sent down probably about 10 or 12 pieces, varying types, singing company music, a couple of songster songs, YP band music, a couple of Triumph series numbers. And I have to say that the very same person who told me that Jubilee would be better as a xylophone solo was also the person who was extremely supportive and was the person who started publishing my stuff. So I'm extremely grateful to Richard Phillips for
oh no, you've named him now.
Yeah, I have indeed. I'm so extremely grateful to Richard for the way in which he supported my development. John Mott was another one. He always wanted to hear my music, and he asked me getting some of my music out there was inextricably linked to joining the Household Troops band. I think, and that was a real help. So John Mott was a great source of encouragement. Two other individuals, apart from family, who have been hugely supportive, massively supportive, but Alan Ramsey, who for a while was the bandmaster at Govan before he moved into the contesting world, he was hugely supportive of my writing, and always came to me with ideas, saying you should try this, so you should try that. Somebody who's become a very good friend of mine is Carol Saunders at the House of Troops, and Carol's always encouraging me to write, and of late I've done a couple of vocal arrangements for James Morley with the Troops band, which has been something different for me to do, and I guess all the other people who I've met and who have always taken the time and opportunity to spend time with me, and that's the likes of Bill Himes. Anytime I've had chats with him, Ken Downey, Andrew Blythe, who else? Ron Mike Norris at New York was a great encouragement. Brian Burdett, who has gone to glory, but from the Canadian Staff Band, he was another who was very generous with his time.
It's very interesting. You talk about being a very sort of self-contained individual, and yet some of the names that have been an inspiration are very big Salvation Army names. So it's very interesting that for the small core band and that you write for, and that you get such a response for, and that you're not sort of seeking to push your name and you just write what comes comfortable, that some of your inspirational mentors and supporters, really quite fascinating people. I mean, you've got your local leadership that is your rock steady sort of nuts and bolts everyday people that know you as a person rather than the name on the sheet. Yeah,
and I think to be honest, I'm fortunate that I've been able to meet these guys.
Yeah.
And I've just, so much of it has been linked to my time with the House of Troops, because you get an opportunity to meet these guys when you're away doing your traveling. I've been lucky enough to go to America 3 times with the Troops, and then also been across to California once to the Rose Bowl parade.
Stand up your march was the winner of the competition, wasn't it? Another very snazzy march.
Well, it was written for the occasion, you know, so it had to be a little bit showy. Really strange to write for a competition. Really strange because there were a lot of set parameters.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled to get in the top 5, and then the top 5 was selected, and then it kind of went to a public vote. It was an online vote. So the person who knew the most people got their march played. So I think I maybe just knew more people. But that was crazy in itself, because you end up hearing that march played, on the Rose Bowl parade, which, 1 million people watch it.
It's an epic thing, isn't it?
In the flesh, on the streets of Pasadena, and then another 100 million or something watch it across the world. And to see, and I remember we went out there, and the Army and Kevin Larson was brilliant, because they said, come across, we'll pay for you and your missus to come, and anybody else who wants to come, just tell them to come. We've got a 3-bedroom house for you that you can have for the week. So as many folk as you can pack in that house, you can bring. So we took my mum, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law came as well, and we had the most fantastic week. But to go out and to watch this incredible parade, and to hear my march being played, and then to go home and watch it repeated on the television, and to be watching ABC, this massive broadcaster, as the Army comes on. And I mean, the Americans love the Salvation Army,
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a really epic thing, the Rose Bowl Parade, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, I
Oh,
don't.
but then to see my name actually coming up on a banner on on the television as it was coming, like here is the Salvation Army Tournament of Roses band playing Stand Up by Paul Drury. It
Yeah,
was
phenomenal.
really freaky.
How does that
It
compare
was
to the Lord Mayor's Parade? Because with the Household Troops, you've marched. The Household Troops are regularly featured in the Lord Mayor's Parade in
yeah,
central London on the Saturday, aren't they? That
yeah.
must be quite a. How do the two experiences coincide? Do they?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Lord Mayor's Parade is very British, isn't it?
Oh, very British. Very British.
And it's you can imagine everything in America is bigger, and of course it's all round roses. So there are these incredible floats, that people put together, and college bands that are. I mean, the army band that they put out, I think, is 100 people in that. The army band that they put out, and that's one of the smaller bands.
Yeah.
There's some college bands with 300 people. It's enormous. It starts with a stealth bomber flying overhead, for goodness sake. It's just the most crazy and amazing thing.
And New Year's Day as well. I mean,
New Year's Day,
most people are sort of
7 o'clock in the morning or
Yeah.
something.
That's what I get. I mean, we get it, 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, 8 o'clock in the morning in California, and everyone's dressed up. You think New Year's Day?
Yeah.
I mean, even here, I was sleeping over from the New Year's services.
We left our house that day at 5 o'clock in the morning or something to be in our places.
But you didn't get much sleep that night.
No, we didn't, and we'd been out the night before because we'd been at another army do, I think down at Tustin Ranch.
Oh, lovely.
Where they, and that was about a 90-minute drive.
To Americans, that's nothing.
So we got in the car and drove back to our house and went to bed and thought we'd get up in 4 hours time and have to drive into Pasadena. But all great. I mean, I just was so grateful for the experience. And I mean, the Salvation Army band at the Rose Bowl Parade have played it. I think they played it for 10 years on the trot. It wasn't just that once. So it was fabulous. And
what happens after the parade? I mean, when
they all
you
go
finish the march, what do you, as a band? Because obviously you've got musicians from literally all over the world participating, helping out. Because it's an epic march, isn't it? It's not just a 5 minute. You're marching for a fairly long time. Because obviously the fragment we see on TV is just a very small part of a very long profession. So, how long did you when you did the march? How long did it take you to do? And what happened?
Well, I've got a slight confession to make. I haven't done the march. I watched the march. I was given the opportunity. Do you want to play, or do you want to watch it? And I thought, I'll watch it. So I watched the parade. So was able to enjoy, the army band as it went past. I don't know what the guys do. I mean, they shut freeways and everything, and freeways become, like just this enormous big car park with thousands of coaches on it because they've got to get people from one place to another. And of course,
all the dresses have got all the costumes and everything have got to be in pristine order for 7 o'clock in the morning.
Unbelievable. It's enormous, and for me, it felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I was just again so grateful for that opportunity. And I remember when it was announced who's march. It was announced at a meeting in America, and it was about 10 o'clock at night. In this big festival where they were announcing, I think it was the territorial commander of the Western Territory, and it was being live streamed. So I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning, waiting to see if my march had been picked, and then it did, and I rushed up the stairs to my wife and said, "It's me," and she went, "Right, okay."
Have you made a cup of tea?
I'll talk to you about it 8 o'clock in the morning when I get up. But happy days.
I mean, and we've talked a lot about your band composition, but you've said yourself that vocal is very much something you enjoy doing. From your compositional point of view, do you find there any differences between vocal and the band side of things? As someone
Yeah.
who doesn't write music, I'm interested to know, because you get a lot of people who are very dedicated to the vocal side and some people to the band side, and you get a lot of crossovers. So
Yeah. My hardest challenge is I'm not that brilliant at writing melodies. I'm good at dealing with other people's melodies, but
yeah,
I'm not fantastic at writing my own. And the other thing that I'm not a fantastic pianist. I'm just a bit of a thumper. So I struggle uh, I struggle to write piano accompaniments that are. My sister's a brilliant pianist. My mum's a great pianist. So I tend to run piano accompaniments past them. Say,
yeah,
is that sensible? Does that make sense to you from a how it looks point of view?
yeah,
So I struggle a little bit with that. But having been a songster leader for a number of years, I mean I love singing. I absolutely adore singing, and I think anything that we're doing with an instrument, we're really just trying to recreate the human voice anyway.
yeah.
So it's really important, and if you can capture that in a in a song, then that's great. But I have to say, I know so much more about the mechanics of banding than I do about the mechanics of putting vocal compositions together. Hence the reason I've not done so much of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's interesting. So, being as you prefer the arrangement, when you're doing a hymn tune arrangement or you hear a tune that's suggested, I mean, this goes back to one of the early questions about originality, that you're more comfortable when you're not having to force a melody, a brand new melody out. So, how do you keep the originality when you're doing? I mean, you've done like 3 Advent Miniatures and Such Love, Breathe on Me. So it's well-established tunes, and how do you keep the originality of the tune when you're trying to bring something new to it?
yeah, I think really it's all about texture and setting.
Yeah,
So for me, it's how what kind of mood are we trying to create? So it's making sure that how you portray the music, uh, any changes that you put in harmonically, or any changes to tempo, or indeed, maybe shifting things from the major to the minor, that kind of stuff. What story are we trying to tell? What we're trying to portray through the music, and I think that's when your own compositional voice comes through. Uh, because I don't think I write in any particular style, but I still think that I can listen to my music. Obviously, I know it's by me because I've written it, but I think, yeah, that sounds like my music kind of sounds, and so I think that's how you create the originality. Uh, but sometimes, of course, you've just got to, if you're sitting with an amazing melody, such as Such Love, for example, which is a gorgeous soaring tune, you don't need to do anything with that. You just
mm,
need to put sympathetic harmonies round about it, and not be too silly with it.
mm-hmm,
And the kind of God inspired message of that music will come through.
mm,
And that's certainly been my experience.
yeah. I'd like to ask a sort of personal question, if I may, because we've talked about
Hmm.
this before, and there may be some people out there going, "I know the name Drury very well."
Yeah,
Now, your grandfather was the great Albert Drury, who done No Citadel.
yeah.
Do you have any memories of your grandfather and his in your life, or was he something you didn't really know?
No, no, I knew him. I knew him quite well. Actually, my other grandfather was a huge figure in my life as well. Who was closer to home. Obviously, my grandpa Drury was, a lot of his officer career was in England,
Mm,
and it was only really when they retired to Scotland that I got, to spend any particular length of time with them. I don't know. I mean, I was always aware that he'd written this march, and actually in his retirement he started writing a little bit more, and he was the executive officer of the Scottish Fellowship Band, or as they were called then, the Veterans Band in Scotland, and he wrote a march for them, which is a great little march, a kind of skippy 6/8 march into glory. There are a lot of similarities between us. We were both left-handed. We're both bass players, and so left-handed conductors are quite unusual things. But we were both that. And when he died in 1992.
Oh,
yeah, quite a number of years ago. And when he died, I was given a lot of his old music books and stuff, and I've still got everything I was given, old vocal hymn books and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And I found the fragments of a march that he'd kind of sketched out, but not really much more than that. And it's always been a challenge for me to see if I can realise that.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I need to do it when the time's right for me, when I can kind of get inside his head, and perhaps.
Did he actually see any of your early compositions then, your early playing? Did he witness any of your early music efforts then?
He knew me as very much as a player. Yeah, he was around, so he'd seen. He was aware of what I was doing from a playing perspective. Perhaps a wee bit less in terms of my writing, but incidentally, as a kind of link to that, my most recent publication in the Army Journals was the tail end of last year, Prelude on the Old 100.
Yep.
Which was actually written for his wife. His wife's 100th birthday.
Oh, lovely.
Hence the reason the old 100. And the first four notes of that fanfare are the first four notes of the March Norwich Citadel.
In fact, the famous whistle.
Yeah, and just bum ba ba bum, that the famous whistle. So I thought that kind of squared the circle quite well and brought things right back. So that was good to write that for her 100th birthday, and to hear it played on her birthday and her presence was great.
Brilliant. That's really interesting to hear. So yeah, we are in this enforced lockdown that's in some sense maybe easing in some sense. So how do you
maybe in England I don't think it's easing quite so much.
No, maybe not. I take one day at a time personally.
Yeah.
So has this meant that the compositional scheme, what's in the pipeline for, have you got any I'll get the word right, commissions have come through, or has it just been a case of finishing them pieces off that you've been putting off because time has not been as fruitful?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm still working, so I'm working. I'm working full time. My wife is also working full time. We've got two young children in the house, age 8 and 5, who we're also trying to educate.
Oh, golly.
And keep occupied, whilst at the same time trying to keep ourselves sane. So actually, in some respects, I've never been so busy in my life. So the challenge I have is actually finding some time to do some writing, but I can exclusively reveal that I've got something very special to finish for somebody very special in my life, and I've got a bit of a deadline for that.
Ooh, deadlines are always good, I'm told.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also, funnily enough, as just before I came on to this session tonight, I got I was on a call with a pal of mine who's a core bandmaster in Scotland who's looking for something for his core band. So I'm gonna get cracking on that in the next few days. So
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
that's helpful. I need people to ask me to do things. It's the push that
Right.
it's the push that I need.
I'll get the email out tonight.
You do that. You do that. I think a lot of us are the same.
Yeah.
You
The
know.
adrenaline. I think Stedman Adams very famously said that when there's a deadline, it's a good motivator to sit down and do it. Otherwise, other progress, other things can get in your life. And you, as you say, you've got the family, you've got all the circumstances that have to be met on a daily basis. So you've got to time it out and do it. But it's still very interesting to hear. Salvation Army song, as of sort of 9 o'clock tonight, what's your favourite at the moment?
Oh, no question of a doubt about that. 745 in the old songbook.
Old song.
Hang on a second.
I could look it up, but it just have to take too long.
I'll hang on a second. I'll get the words for you.
I've got one on the shelf just across.
Wait, a good composer. Always got my songbook close at hand.
Yes.
745, written by actually 749 in the old songbook. I've not even checked if it's in the new songbook. Written by Bramwell Booth, was the inspiration for the Victors.
Oh, really? Lovely. Very lovely piece of music.
And we sing it in army circles to the hymn tune "Land of Pure Delight," which is the middle movement of the Victors. Oft I have heard thy tender voice, which calls, dear Lord, to me, and asks a quick yet lasting choice twixt worldly joys and thee. It stirs my heart's deep fountain springs and breaks the barriers down. It bids me rise on faith's strong wings and cries, no cross, no crown. I love these words. I can really
619 in the current songbook.
Right. Oh well, that's good to know it survived. And my favourite 4 lines, and this will be on my tombstone, and this will be this will be ingrained on my coffin somewhere when the time comes, and it will be the last words that people sing at my funeral. And of course, the last 4 lines of the 3rd verse are quite often used in old army days as a benediction. And interestingly enough, it also features, because the tune that's used is Miles Lane, which is also featured in the Victors in the final movement. And the last 4 lines, and I struggle to say these words without crying, so please.
And in the battles blazing?
Yeah, and in the battles blazing heat where flesh and blood would quail, I'll fight and trust and still repeat that Jesus cannot fail.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, and if you can imagine an old Salvation Army meeting, and you finish by singing that to the hymn tune Miles Lane, and then at the end you just crack into it and crown him Lord of all. It just gets me every time. Lovely words, and I really, Bramwell Booth had his struggles. He had his struggles with his mental health, and I can resonate with some of that, I find those words hugely inspirational.
Interesting.
And my reason for being, I suppose.
Favorite Bible quote? Do you have a favorite passage?
Oh yes, 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your cares on him because he cares for you. That's my favourite.
That's a perfectly good one.
Verse.
Well, I think we better call this quits because it's getting late and you've got a family to deal with.
Hopefully they're sleeping.
Hopefully they're sleeping. We haven't been laughing too much. But it's been an absolute pleasure and a delight to talk music, composition, and to hear the funny stories and your own tales of your musical walk with Christ. It really has been a blessing, and I hope that this chat will encourage others to follow in your footsteps and be encouraged by your music and your spirituality. I'm going to ask you to join me in a prayer for your ministry. As always, I invite anyone to join in, open-eyed, closed-eyed, whatever takes your fancy. Dear Lord, Paul is such a devoted follower of you that it's sometimes impossible to believe that we can rely totally on you when we get stuck. But we have a friendship with you. We have a link with you that nothing can be separated from. We can put our trust and faith in you. We can fight and trust and still repeat that you do not fail us. I pray for his spirituality. I pray for his mentorship, his encouragement, his friends and family, his musical ability, his trust in you, Lord, his love in you, Lord, his ability to craft a good tune, Lord, his fact that he wants to keep his feet firmly planted on that solid rock, and that the whirligig of army wonderness that comes with famous marches and hymn tunes and the jolliness and the swinginess that sometimes accompanies it will just reinforce his strength in you, Lord, and that he will know you so well and so better, and that he strives just to seek and to serve you as only he can, Lord, and that he knows that you are with him every step of the way, guiding, guarding, encouraging him and supporting him, and just being that constant in his life that he so desperately seeks and strives to follow as best he can. But we pray for Paul, pray for his family, his friends, his army corps, his music ministry, friends and family, his local musicians who seek to support him and help him, and his own humble origins, Lord. We thank you for them and for what he continues to do on a daily basis, and particularly at this time, Lord, for his family and the challenges that maybe he never thought would come this way in a family structure, Lord, with education and teaching and having to cope with home learning. It's not something that many people have ever thought of doing. So I pray for him with that and his family, and for all those other army families that are having to go through this at that time. But I just put him in your hands now, Lord, and ask your blessing upon the wonderful person that is Paul Drury. Amen.
Thank you.
3, 2.